You've seen a little bit about Jesse and Jesse Schell, currently running Schell Games, which you mentioned was 60 people.
Yep.
60 people who must have the coolest job descriptions out there right now, creating gaming interfaces and that kind of thing. Also, the students at Carnegie Mellon are blessed to have Jesse lecturing there, and even with a professor of what was it, entertainment technology.
That's right, entertainment technology.
Well, that beats professor of psychology any day. Jesse was at Disney for 7 years as an Imagineer, probably also just doing fun stuff. And I think the interesting stuff there is it wasn't just games, but it was sort of the online, offline sort of wedded together, which I think makes Jesse have a unique perspective on gaming and so forth. So please, warm welcome for Jesse Schell. He's going to talk about gaming.
Okay, let's see. I'll get in there and stand by the podium all official. Look there, I'm official. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm going to talk about, the talk today is called The Pleasure Revolution. It's all a lot of new material, so some of it might be a little bumpy, so I apologize if I confuse you. But this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's, I really was kind of eager to talk to people about it, and I thought the audience here would be particularly interested. Click. Come on, clicker. I'm having a clicker fail. Wait, the clicker's off. Somehow. La, la, la. There. It has a little off switch that, like, offed itself. All right. Click. Now I'm good. Sorry about that. All right. So, it was an excellent introduction, so I'll just pass through this stuff. Right. I run a game studio out of Pittsburgh. We have about 60 people. We've been at it about 8 years, doing all kinds of things. We really, our core focus is on the future of social gaming, is how we see it. I have the pleasure of teaching at the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a very unusual place because the whole idea is that we bring in artists and engineers, put them on multicultural teams here, and teach them how to invent things they couldn't possibly make alone. I did used to be the creative director at Walt Disney Imagineering's virtual reality studio, working on little theme park attractions and on online experiences. And I wrote a book called The Art of Game Design, which has proven somewhat popular. And the book also has a deck of cards that accompanies it, because the whole idea of it is that good game design happens by looking at your experience through many different perspectives, and the cards enumerate the perspectives. And something special that we've done today for people at the conference, there are online versions of the cards on iPhone and Android, and for today only they're free, so that anybody here is welcome, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you're welcome to download them at no cost. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about some things that are new, things I haven't talked about before. There was an excellent book, Homo Ludens, was written by Johann Huizinga in 1938, and it was one of the first books that really seriously dealt with the notion of play and how does play work. Play has never been a topic that's received its due in terms of serious study compared to the position it holds in our lives. And one of the things that Johann put in the foreword to the book that I always found very inspiring, you can tell he's very concerned about whether he is competent to write this book. And he says, to fill in all the gaps in my knowledge beforehand was out of the question for me. I had to write now or not at all, and I wanted to write. And so he just wrote the book anyway. And like he said, it wasn't a perfect book. In some ways, it posed more questions than it had answers, but it sparked a great deal of discussion and had great value that way. And so the material I'm going to talk about today, I hope, will some similar discussion. So I gave a talk last February at the DICE conference that got a lot of attention. It was all about the notion that real life and games are starting to come together. I've been observing how in the video game world, things are getting more and more about reality. Things like the Wii and the Xbox Kinect, which are all about using your physical body. Things like Facebook gaming and massive multiplayer gaming, which are all about playing games with your real friends. And at the same time, the real world has been reaching out to gaming with more and more loyalty programs, etc. systems of points and systems of prizes and systems of tiers of reward. And I painted a picture of how I thought that might come together that had that a lot of people found disturbing. It was on some sites it was posted as the most disturbing presentation ever. And the fundamental idea was I painted a picture of going through an ordinary day, everything from brushing your teeth to riding to work to talking with people at work and dealing with the educational system and watching television, and a system where technology becomes so inexpensive that we have embedded sensor systems in just about everything that we interact with. Every piece of product packaging would have a built-in CPU, Wi-Fi connector, screen, connection to Facebook, camera, and microphone, so that everything has the ability to sense what you're doing all the time. And one thing that I know about game designers is as soon as there's a new sensor, they'll make a game for it. And so I painted this picture of how our entire life may get subsumed by gaming in something I call the game apocalypse, where every moment of your life you're engaged in playing some kind of game. Now, a lot of people, I didn't expect anyone would care. I'm a college professor, I'm not used to people listening to me. But then we had 1 million YouTube views, which was very unexpected. And as a result, I started getting contacted by everybody under the sun who was like, yes, I have my thing, and I want to make it a game. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to put points on it. We're going to put badges on it. And that works, right? Because points and badges are what everybody wants. So we'll just stick them on there, and that'll work, right? And no, well, no, not necessarily. That won't necessarily work. The analogy that I had to keep thinking of was chocolate, right? It's as if I said, oh yeah, things can be tastier. You know, sometimes adding chocolate to some things makes them tastier. People say, yes, that's it. Chalkification, that's the solution. Chalkification is what we need to do to all of our products. Like ice cream, right? Wouldn't ice cream be better with chocolate on it? Well, yeah, actually, ice cream does kind of take a step up. Vanilla ice cream, put some chocolate sauce on it, that's good. That works out. Okay, great. Then we'll do the same with cottage cheese. It's going to be great. We're going to put chocolate on cottage cheese. It's going to be chockified, and it's going to be super good. No, that's not an appropriate place to have chocolate. Chocolate is not going to resonate. Do you mean we need to have more chocolate or a different kind of chocolate? No, chocolate doesn't necessarily go everywhere. How about on a hot dog? Can we put it on there? No, that's probably not a good idea either. Maybe somebody would like that, but mostly no. Okay, how about this? Because I really believe you can chalkify everything. Staplers. We're going to chalkify the stapler. Like, that doesn't even make sense. You can't eat a stapler. I know you can't eat a stapler. However, if the stapler was covered in chocolate, and everybody loves chocolate, if the stapler is covered in chocolate, people are going to visit the stapler more often. Maybe they'll be lifting the chocolate off the stapler, and they're thinking, while I'm here, I might as well do some stapling. Therefore, we'll sell more staples. And no, that's not a good argument. And believe me, I have conversations with people like this all the time who want to kind of take game mechanics and cram them into everything. I had a vitamin company call me. Yes, we want to make a game out of people taking their vitamins. We're going to give them points every time they take their vitamins. I said, okay, well now let's stop and think about this for a minute. Like, you understand that perfection in vitamin taking means you take like a vitamin every day, right? Yes, that's right. That's what we want. We want to have them taking one every day. So perfection means monotony forever. Like, well, yeah, but there's points, right? Right, and if you look at almost any game in the world, games do not have monotony forever as a goal. They get interesting and more challenging. I said, are you inventing new vitamins that get like harder to take each day? Maybe they get larger and larger, or farther away, or something like, no, we want the regular vitamins. Okay. So the thing to understand is that not only are our kind of game rewards is every game structure appropriate in every situation, but even worse than that, there are things people don't realize about the idea of giving rewards. There's an excellent book what everybody wants to do, right? You know, turn the everyday things you do into the dreamiest person rewards, right? That's what everybody wants to do. We're going to take this boring thing you got to do anyway, and we're going to make it a magical, game-like experience. Everyone who's kind of exploring this space should check out this book. It's called Punished by Rewards by this guy, EmMeCon, who's done an excellent job of surveying the psychological research of reward systems and when they work and when they don't work. And the subtitle being The Trouble with Gold Stars, Incentive Plans, A's, Praise, and Other Bribes. And one of the fundamental conclusions proven out again and again and again in psychological research is that if you bribe someone to do something, they will come to hate the thing that you bribed them to do. So one of the classic studies, they would bring children in and put them in two groups. And they'd give both groups puzzles. And they'd say, we need you to test these puzzles for us. We're going to give you a half hour to test these puzzles. And one group got something extra. They'd say, you know what, for every puzzle you guys test, we're going to give you $5. Whereas the other group was just testing the puzzles. At the end of it, you could see a little bit of a difference in how the kids interacted with the puzzles. The kids getting the $5 sometimes would test a few more puzzles than the other kids. They would kind of do it a little more rapidly. But the real thing they were testing for was at the end. At the end, they'd say, okay, kids, time's up. Someone's going to come get you. Just wait here for a minute. And then they'd leave them alone for 20 minutes and watch what would happen. The kids who were paid to test the puzzles behave very differently than the kids who were not. The kids who were not paid to test the puzzles, well, they had 20 minutes, nothing to do. They'd sit there and keep playing with the puzzles. The kids who were paid to test the puzzles would put the puzzles down and sit and wait. Because being paid in order to do the puzzles sent the message that these are not worth doing unless you get paid to do it. And these types of studies have been repeated and repeated and repeated in many places. And many people who've come away from this book looking at all these studies, because he looks at it in terms of not only advertising and marketing, but also incentive plans in offices, what's the right way to give out rewards in schools, et cetera, even raising children. A lot of people come away saying, okay, got it, rewards never work. They're never a good idea. But we know that that's not true, because we see reward systems all the time that do seem to work. And the tricky aspect seems to be the mysterious boundary between extrinsic rewards, rewards outside, and things that are intrinsically rewarding. So, for example, maybe you've got, maybe Pepsi launches a campaign that's all about you're going to get points for the more Pepsi you buy. And you could say, that's going to make people not like to buy Pepsi in the long run, looking at these results. But what happens if me and my friends kind of get into this thing, and we start getting a little contest among ourselves to see which of us can get the most Pepsi points, and it becomes this game with us that's really more about kind of social connection than it is about really caring about the points. I just care about, this as kind of a fun game with my friends. That ends up being intrinsically rewarding, this relationship I'm having with my friends. So the part that's complicated is these extrinsic systems can often bring out intrinsic aspects. And that's where this gets confusing. And it makes it clear that we don't understand the psychology as well as we need to. So if you're not just going to slap points and badges on absolutely everything, what are you going to do? How do you do it? Well, the key is that things are contextual, right? We do these things because they're pleasurable. That's why we want this. That's why when people talk about trying to gamify things, trying to add these game qualities, the thing we know about games is they're pleasurable. And one of the things about pleasure is it's contextual. So some people who come away from the Punished by Rewards book say, well, wait a minute. Does that mean that frequent flyer miles are a bad idea? Because all it is a point system, where we're giving you prizes for buying airline tickets. Maybe that's a bad idea. But we know it's not a bad idea. We've seen that it works. We've seen that it can be very effective. And the key to that is understanding the psychology of airline tickets. So the people most likely to use and value frequent flyer systems are not just the average person, they're business travelers. And business travelers have a different mindset than other people, particularly, when they're on business, when they're getting ready for a trip. Business travelers, when they're going on a trip, they're not just like, it's not a choice. They have to go. They have to go on this trip. Could they take a boat or a train? Probably not. They probably have to fly. So here's the thing they have to do. They have to fly from here to there. Do they care what airline they fly on? Mostly no, right? They all stink, and we know that. And so mostly it doesn't matter very much. So here we have a situation where it's something they have to do. They're going to spend a lot of money, and they don't really care which one they pick. This is a good situation to kind of use a small system to tip the scales. Now, you could pick a lot of systems, but part of what works so well with airline miles is it's not just that I'm giving you free prizes. They could just give you cash back, right? That could be the system that they use. Hey, you know what? For every one you spend, we'll just give you, $20 cash back, and you get that. But they don't do that. They give you tickets to other places, but I think a bigger part of it, the part that people seem to really respond to, isn't so much those prizes, but prizes that have to do with status. Because when you're on a business trip, when you're planning a business trip, your status is very much on your mind. You're going out somewhere to impress somebody, to make a sale, or to close a deal, or to give a presentation, or whatever it is, and you're trying to psych yourself up for it. You're trying to convince yourself, yes, I'm an important person. I can do this. I have confidence. And, if you end up getting a free upgrade to first class, and of course they could, imagine if first class was like way in the back of the plane and it was super cool back there, but they don't. They put it in front of the plane so everyone can see that you're in first class, right? So it's this very visible, high status reward that totally makes sense. And then they do more than just give those as prizes. They have tiers of systems, right? So you get silver preferred and gold and platinum and these different levels of status because, again, status is very much on your mind when you're doing this. And you respond to things like the idea of, being a platinum member is meaningful to you. You took the same system and brought it to Toys R Us. I don't think it would work very well. Right? If I told you, hey, congratulations, you spent so much in Toys R Us, you're now a platinum member. Your reaction probably wouldn't be, oh, I feel so important. It might be, wait, how much am I spending on toys? Let me go back and look at this. I need to spend less. Something's wrong with me. Right? The context here doesn't make sense. The system doesn't resonate. You're putting chocolate on cottage cheese, and it wouldn't be a good idea. Similarly, you go to what's going on in supermarkets. Supermarkets started having cards and giving little discounts, and people were like, oh, this is okay, but couldn't they just give me the discounts? And then the gas point system showed up. And suddenly everyone loved those little cards. Everyone is so excited about the gas points. Now, they could give you, the airline could give you free gas money. They could do that as a prize, but no, that doesn't make sense contextually. When you're at the grocery store and you're shopping, which you have to do, there's no choice, you have to eat, you have to go to the grocery store, and you're making choices about what to buy, your mindset is saving money. I'm here, I want to not get ripped off, which one of these is going to cost a little less, and that's what you're thinking about, saving money. And so when someone says to you, hey, guess what? You can save money on gas here too. It seems natural. It's exactly what you're looking for. You're in the right mindset. And so those sorts of systems work well because they fit in contextually. Now, part of the problem here with pleasure, designing kind of for pleasure, is that pleasure is really complex. It's really complicated. We have a lot of different things that we find pleasurable, and we don't understand them very well. And this has a lot to do with the fact that the human brain is just so insanely complicated. It is the most complex object in the known universe. There is no more complicated structure than that. And so that's part of what makes this tricky and hard to figure out. Now some people might counter and say, now wait a minute though. I mean, yeah, the brain might be complex, but isn't pleasure simple? Isn't it just something with dopamine receptors and like, yeah, it hits these and then that's that? And on one level it is. But the thing is, your brain knows that if it's too free and liberal with how it gives out, those little jolts of pleasure that you get for doing things, such careful guard on it. And one thing I want to talk about a little bit, it's almost, you know, every time I talk to people about this topic, everybody kind of giggles a little because, you know, we're uncomfortable talking about pleasure. And it's partly because we often, our brain quickly kind of makes this association to kind of sexual pleasure, which is kind of obviously an awkward and embarrassing topic. But in general, we overall have kind of a juvenile notion of pleasure. Our brain tends, we don't want to think about it. We tend not to think about it in detail and its many layered nuances, which is weird because at the same time, this is the reason we do everything. The things that our brain finds pleasurable are the motivation for everything that human beings do. And our ability to understand how pleasure works is going to help inform our ability to kind of make life better and more interesting. Because seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, that's fundamentally what living organisms are about. And everything that we do can be traced back to one of those two things. So what does this have to do with games? Well, games are special. Games are different than other things that we design. Most of the things that we design are designed for reasons of efficiency, for effectiveness. There's a task that needs to be done. I need something that's going to help me achieve that task. And I will evaluate how good this thing is based on whether the task has been achieved successfully. Games are not that way. Games are designed entirely for pleasure. They have no other purpose. All a game is a matrix of rules and systems that are designed to create pleasure in people. To the extent that they do that, they succeed. To the extent that they do not, like, why did you make this, right? A game that doesn't bring any pleasure is just a ridiculous construct that nobody would ever want. So here's an example that helped illustrate that idea and how important the notion of how designing for pleasure is different than designing for efficiency. Let's say I had this big red button and I told you that, hey, I've developed a new software program. It's really, really cool because it's all about your taxes. I'm going to give you the big red button. You're going to push it one time. Boom, tax is done. You would say, that's great. This is probably the best tax system I've ever heard of. One button and done. Yes, perfectly, optimum refund, all that stuff. And okay, that's good. What else you got? Well, I've got something else for you. I made this new game. It's called Angry Birds. Right? And here's how it works. One red button, push it, you win Angry Birds. Awesome, right? Best game ever? No, worst game ever. That was terrible. That was terrible. Where's the challenge? Where's the fun? Where is all that stuff that I came here for? And so that's the fundamental difference between designing for pleasure and designing for efficiency and effectiveness. Now, this is a subtle thing because, again, it's contextual. I have a friend who loves doing tax forms. He thinks it's super fun. He loves learning all the details. He gets excited around tax time so he can learn everything and master it. And he's trying to get the best refund and how to do it and comparing all the systems. He likes it so much he'll do his friend's taxes for free, just so he can kind of get into it and do it more and more and more. And similarly, there are people who would like, oh, this Angry Birds game, I don't like this at all. Boom, I win, good, I'm out of here, right? And they might like that better. So it gets into the situation of, well, what are we talking about then? Is it just the kind of software it is? What is it? The key is your mental attitude. When it's something that you have to do, you design for it one way. When it's something that you want to do, it's completely different, right? And this has a lot of implications. Understanding the difference between have to, I'm doing it because the task needs to get done for some reason I don't care about, and I want to do it right now, right? This is the difference between, say, duty, yes, I'm sworn to do this. I said I'd do it, I will do it, and fun. I'm doing it because I feel like it right now. I'm doing it just to finish the whole game. For some people, oh, that's a lot of work. I got to keep solving all these things and going again and again. It all has to do with have to and want. You can take it farther. This is the difference between slavery and freedom. Right? Slave has to do something. Someone who's free does something because they want to. And this is the difference between designing for efficiency and designing for pleasure. And one of the things that's happening that we're seeing more and more as we move into the 21st century is more and more design is becoming about pleasure and not so much about efficiency. Why is this happening? It's partly happening because there's like the affluence of the world is growing. A great example would be food. There was a time not so long ago that people would eat, yes, I have to eat, and I'm going to eat whatever I can find, and I think that's fine. That's all I care about. Did I get some minimum amount of food to eat? But nowadays, man, in first world countries, people, eat very much for pleasure, right? They don't just like, yes, I could have a bagel and a vitamin pill every day. No, that's not what they do. They try, well, what would be something interesting? What maybe a new kind of juice I'll try? I'll experiment with wines. And eating becomes very much about pleasure and less about efficiency. And we're seeing this everywhere. We're seeing it, with food. In the workplace, people are talking about how can, there's in the 20th century, there's a huge focus on which job pays the most. You hear that much less now, and you hear about which job will I find most personally satisfying. Education. There's a lot of people talking about this for education. Should education just be something you have to do? It seems that the smartest, best, most successful people in the world are people who figured out stuff they wanted to do, and they studied and learned that. Maybe customizing your education as opposed to standardizing your education by doing education you want to do as opposed to have to do is going to be very important in the 21st century. And then even, things like cars, right? It's very seldom do people advertise, hey, this car is the cheapest. Why? Because it's the cheapest. It's cheap and effective. It's all about the driving experience is what we hear about because that's what people want. Don't worry, that's not real. This was an error message from the 20th century. Some group of people, hundreds of people, got together and said, yes, this is the best, most effective way to present this information in this situation. Actually, I think they said it more like, yes, this is the best, most effective way. Anyway, error messages aren't like this in the 21st century, right? They're like this, right? So you get Twitter screws up and it has a problem, you get the fail whale. It's worse. Right? And you can argue that it's worse, but like, in some ways, I don't know. I mean, it's, I don't know. Everything, the design of pleasure is kind of infiltrating its way into everything. So who's going to help us with this? Right? Who is going to help us figure out if pleasure is so important? Who's going to tell us all about it? We could go to the psychologist. They must know a lot about it. This is all about the human brain and dopamine receptors and I'm sorry, with respect to the psychologists in the room, I haven't seen that that's the case. Psychologists seem to mostly be focused on preventing suffering. There's a huge amount of work to making people be mentally healthy enough that they're not in suffering, and predicting behavior. And those are both important, but neither of them is really about creating pleasure. And pleasure has been problematic for psychologists because it's hard to measure. There's no funnel-meter you can stick in your ear, right? And it tells exactly how much fun you have. Some advances have been made that way, but we're still a long way off. And then there's something else with the psychologists. I've been to their parties. Now, it stands to reason that the people who know most about the human mind in the world would throw the best parties in the world. That only makes sense, right? But no. So this tells us one of two things. Either psychologists don't really understand pleasure in a way that can be put to practical use, or they don't care. Either way, they haven't been much help to us on this so far. Hopefully, they'll find ways to be more helpful. Right now, I've been getting a lot more help on this from the game design community. So I want to kind of go through and talk about some pleasures that we encounter all the time. Mark LeBlanc is a game designer who does a lot of interesting thinking and writing, and something that he did maybe 10, 15 years ago is he attempted to kind of come up with a taxonomy of game pleasures, because he realized that, hey, you know, games, there's a saying we sometimes have, games are structures of desire, and games are all about pleasure. We ought to kind of write down what are the pleasures, because no one's done it before. We should give it a try. So Mark gave it a shot. So he categorizes things into 8 categories. First one is the pleasure of sensation. There are many things, just sensing them is pleasurable, right? Certainly a lot of what goes on with food and sex falls into this category, but similarly, just, you know, the idea of being outside and feeling the rain on you can be something that's very pleasurable. And so this is actually, there's rather a lot of stuff that fits in here. But it's complicated because it's not just the feeling, it's what this incites inside us, right? Are these people having fun? Right? This is definitely a sensation. That's what's going on here. They're basically, all that's going on is no real information is coming to them in the way that we normally think of it. It's a sensation of what's happening to them. They're having this sort of thrill sensation. But now thrill is complicated. There's a saying we have at the in the amusement park industry: fear minus death equals fun. If these guys didn't have some level of confidence that this thing was going to take them safely down, it would be a different experience, right? If they felt, yeah, no, we're just going to crash when we hit the bottom, a very different experience than knowing that, okay, this is supposed to be okay, but it's still terrifyingly scary. Okay, so pleasures and sensation. But then another important one that he lists is fantasy. Now, we see this in games all the time. It's one of the things that really separate games from other types of activities and applications, is that games very often enter into this realm of fantasy. Not all games, sports almost never do this in a direct way. Of course, one might fantasize about becoming a famous athlete, but the other aspects of fantasy aren't in it. But what I think people don't consider enough is how much fantasy permutes our daily lives, and how much of our thinking and decision-making happens due to fantasy. Marvin Minsky, in his book Society of the Mind, talks about an interesting example. He talks about how he found himself using fantasy to focus more on his research. He'd be doing his research and feel like, you know what, I think I'm not going to work tonight, I'm going to take a break. And he said he found it incredibly useful to imagine his arch nemesis. He didn't want to name his arch nemesis, but he had a researcher who was his arch nemesis, and he would imagine that that guy is working tonight, and that guy is going to outdo me, and he's going to show me up, and I'm not going to let that happen. And that imagination would get him to work hard. And so fantasy, in an unspoken way, is often woven into everyday experiences. And there are many ways that we find that incredibly pleasurable. The third one he lists is the pleasure of narrative. We enjoy hearing stories, but more than just hearing any story, we like stories that are well told, that have a certain kind of a story arc to them. It can be very exciting for us. The pleasure of challenge is central in all games. People like solving problems. That sounds strange and counterintuitive. You know, I wish I didn't have so many problems. But when you can solve them, we like that. And it's one of the things that makes humans special. We're so good at solving problems. We're really, really well cut out for it. And every game is a problem to be solved. But what separates game problems from real-world problems is they're generally solvable. A lot of real-world problems, can I make this relationship work? You might not know, right? Maybe it's not solvable. But if you're presented with a game, the game is winnable somehow. You just got to figure out how. That's part of what makes games rewarding. They're challenges that are possible. Pleasure of fellowship is one he lists, and this is obviously incredibly complex and rich. This is all the pleasure of interacting with other people on all kinds of levels. It could be on a competitive level, it could be very much about a friendship level, it could be about helping other people. So much comes into this. And we understand sudden existence of social networks has made us all confront this question. Just as, when color television came into popularity, everyone started asking the question, are your dreams in color or black and white? And it wasn't really a question people had asked before. And similarly, wait, what is a friend really? Isn't something that's been much on people's minds. But now it is, as we're starting to redefine what friendship, connectivity, and community mean, we have to understand the basics. The pleasure of discovery is something that a lot of games have. People love to discover things that they care about. If there's something they're interested in, they're going to want to find out every little nook and cranny about it. And we see that in games, certainly, but we see it in all kinds of experiences. What would it be like to be an Amazon Prime member? Sounds cool, but what would it actually be like? There's only one way to find out. I got to try it, right? And then you've learned it. You've found out. Well, is there anything else Amazon Prime can tell me about? Are there other nooks and crannies in Amazon that I can get into? The seventh pleasure we list is the pleasure of expression. And self-expression is really, really important to us. And sometimes it can be through artistic expression, but a lot of times it's just how you present yourself, how you communicate to other people. And games give an opportunity for this in many ways, through being able to create content, through being able to create an avatar, through being able to adopt a persona, through being able to help other people, how you just choose to act and interact and share with other people. I love this. I mean, this is just so typical of what's going on in the 21st century. Everything is becoming customizable. You could go online and make your own M&Ms with any picture you want. You could be eating your own face right now. I don't know why you want that, but you could do it. And this is a big part of the 21st century. People are really adopting this particular pleasure, the pleasure of customization and expression. And the last one he lists is submission, which is weird. What is that? What's he mean? And he's talking about the peculiar pleasure that comes from giving yourself over into the game world. Kind of saying, all right, we're going to do it. Yes, yes, we're all going to do the hokey pokey and we're all going to like it, right? And you put yourself in, yes, I'm in World of Warcraft, and I care about the things that happen in here. There's something special about agreeing to do that. And certainly with advertising campaigns, we see this all the time. I mean, I watched some of my friends go through the recent Mountain Dew marketing campaign, which the whole idea was, we're going to pick a new flavor, we're not sure which one, so we're going to let you all vote on it. But you get more votes, the more Mountain Dew you buy. And I knew some people who got really caught up in this. They committed. Yes, I'm going to care. We picked our flavor. We're going to make that thing win, right? And of course, their flavor did win, and now they own it for life, right? They love it. It's their flavor, right? Now, so mark the blank stuff is useful. Here's something from some psychologists I actually did find particularly useful. These guys at immersive.com, Rigby, they talk about these three different things. Competence, mastery, the pleasure of mastering something. It's obviously something powerful in games. Autonomy, I want freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And relatedness, connecting to others, which is sort of like fellowship we were talking about before. And one of the things they were able to really show in some long-term studies was that these three factors were far more important than is the experience fun. And that fun, the idea of is it fun, can actually be very misleading. Because things that are fun might be fun for a moment, but things that make you feel masterful, give you freedom, and let you connect with others are things that give people long-term pleasure. So once again, it's a question of understanding the deeper mesh of pleasures as part of an experience. Novelty is obviously an important pleasure. People love stuff that's new. New. No one says, I'm going to the store to buy an old game. No, I'm going to buy a new game. Everyone wants something that's new. And that's, I think, a big part of the reason we've seen such success in the App Store. And it's why games took over. I don't think Apple expected that games were going to be the primary business of the App Store. They might have called it the Game Store if they'd done that. But games are the majority of the revenue and the apps downloaded. And that's partly because with entertainment experiences, we have an endless hunger me find my way through the streets of the city, I don't have an endless hunger for novelty. I want one that works because it's something I have to have. When it's something I want to have, novelty, novelty, novelty. I want more, 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 more. Now, you might say, now wait, that's not true for all games. Look at sports. There's only so many of them. We haven't had a really, really popular team sport been in this country like in 100 years. I mean, you know, the game of basketball is older than the invention of the brassiere, right? There may be a connection. But think about that later. But there's a reason for this. I mean, there's a reason sports aren't like the App Store with like, hey, 15 new sports came out this week. Figure out which one you like best. It's because sports aren't a solo activity. Sports are a social activity. And fellowship is more powerful than novelty. And so the fellowship and the teamwork and the ongoing kind of history that you have with the people who play these games is more powerful than the variety. And this has huge implications for people who are making social games and applications, because it may mean that the way the App Store works is going to be very different in the long run for what ends up working in social networking. Laughing, obviously, everybody likes laughing, but the pleasure of humor is more subtle and nuanced than I think people realize. A fellow lecturer at the universities, you know, we were talking about how many jokes are too many in a lecture. And he said, well, you got to have the right amount. If too many people get distracted, but there's a good reason to have them there. It's not just to be silly. It's not just for fun. He points out that once people hear one joke, it's enjoyable, right? If everyone around you is laughing and you're laughing, it's enjoyable. And even if you missed it the first time, wait, everybody's laughing. I want to find out what's going on. If there's one joke, there might be more jokes. And what that means, you're going to pay attention, which is exactly what the lecturer wants. Nurturing is a powerful pleasure that people have. It tends to slant more female than male, certainly. But a big part of the success of games like Farmville is an understanding that nurturing fits very well into games that you can play daily over a long-term basis. The pleasure of destruction is greatly underrated. This one slants a little more man, I think. Because, man, blowing stuff up is fun. Man. And games are a really good place to do it because you can. And this has been used in many interesting ways. I was fascinated with the early Facebook Burger King campaign, where they would give you a coupon for a free Whopper if you took somebody off your friends list. So it's, which of your friends are you gonna give up for a Whopper? Was their campaign. And people talked about this, and some people really delighted in this. Yeah, guess what? I sold you out for a Whopper. Beautiful things are just a pleasure to behold. And it's partly the pleasure of sensation, but it's something much deeper. Our ability to appreciate, understand, and behold beautiful things is really important. And in the 21st century, we see this everywhere. Everything's getting so pretty. I remember, 20th century toothbrushes, 3 colors, 1 shade. 21st century, it's like a tropical fish aquarium. There's shapes, and they really are tropical fish. There's shapes and colors and like stripes and fins and different textures, and it's beautiful. And it's just sort of where we're going, This is something I have to do. This is something I'm picking the one I want. Something I wanted. Do you think AT&T could have made this? It was only 30 years ago that it was against the law for anyone but AT&T to provide telecommunication service in this country. Against the law for them to do it. Right? Free markets are a huge part of this. And the fact that the internet has made so many markets open up more and more, it's allowed for much more wanna and much less have to. This is just this building. I lectured in this building. I was in England, and I was just blown away. This is a 21st century building. It was built just after the millennium. We didn't build buildings like that in the 20th century. We built this. There's 20th century buildings down there. Yeah, we gotta get it done. We gotta get stereoscopic 3D, because this has just been such a topic that everyone's been talking about. That, you know, hey, we went from regular TV to HD TV, and now the TV people are terrified. Because have you noticed these new flat screen TVs? They seem to last forever. Those old tube TVs, they get a little, you know, they take a long time to warm up after a while, and things get kind of out of sync. The flat screen TVs don't seem to do that. No one knows how long they'll live. Could it be you'll have the same one in 50 years, 100 years? The TV people, no, we screwed up. 3D, you gotta buy a 3D TV. And so they're really pushing it, they really want it. But what's the pleasure? And so this is a deep question. What is the pleasure of stereoscopic 3D? This is a deep question that, again, points to our total ignorance. Of like, what's pleasurable and why? Why is 3D pleasurable? Is it pleasurable enough to suffer through the glasses and suffer through the expense and everything? And then we don't know. We can look at history. History tells us some things. Now, I've had some experience working with 3D stuff, working on these 3D things in amusement parks. People love it. Oh, I've never done this before. Oh, huge novelty. I put this on. I have a 5-minute experience. That was great. And then you get out of there. Now, that's the pleasure of novelty, and it's really easy to mix that up with something that you want long-term, every day. Stereoscopy was invented in 1849, around the same time as photography. It's not new. It's been around for generations and generations. Now, if you wanted, you could have every photograph you took be a stereo photograph. You totally could. Your whole life you could have done it. But you don't care that much. It's not that pleasurable for you. You were willing to make the move from black and white film to color film, and the move from film to digital cameras. Those things were all pleasurable for you, but never yet. Has anyone in this room on a 3D camera? Nobody even has one. So if it's not important enough for our photographs, is it really what we want on our television? Alfred Hitchcock. Not a lot of people realize he made a 3D movie. Dial M for Murder was in 3D. He was so disappointed at its ability to kind of get across the feelings, emotions, and sensations that he hoped it would have. He refused to let the premiere be shown in 3D. He was that disappointed. And I'm like, man, Alfred Hitchcock can't do it. Whew! The rest of us got some trouble. So here's my prediction about 3D. I think 3D is going to be less like HD TV, and I think it's going to be more like 5.1 stereo surround sound. A few rich nerds will have it, and the rest of us will visit their houses now and then. So here's another pleasure, the pleasure of sharing. We love to share. People love sharing. And the internet has made it so easy to share things. Wikipedia, I remember when I first heard about it, it's an encyclopedia everybody can edit. I'm like, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. That's going to suffer the tragedy of the commons. It's going to be the ugliest, most messed up encyclopedia ever. Instead, there are arguments to be made that this is the greatest achievement of humanity. It is the largest, most complete reference work that's ever been created. And it was created faster than the Encyclopedia Britannica. And it's all powered by the fact that people love sharing. We love it. You see this in the video game world. The success of games like Little Big Planet, which are all about making your own levels and sharing them with other people. Over 2 million levels have been made and shared. Anticipation is an understated pleasure. People don't talk about anticipation nearly enough. And anticipation is weird, because anticipation is there's a pleasure coming, and it's pleasurable that it's coming. If it came faster, it might actually be less pleasurable, because the anticipation wouldn't be drawn out. As Willy Wonka said, the suspense is killing me. I hope it lasts. And psychological research has been done showing that very much of what goes on in the brain with our appreciation of music is the pleasure of anticipation. Our brain hears certain rhythms and patterns and notes and progressions, and it anticipates that other things are coming. And it can be pleasurable when those show up, and it can be pleasurable when it goes a different direction. Fiero is something the game designers like to say. It's an Italian word. It's that time when you're, yeah! It's that kind of level of excitement, of huge triumphant victory. Phelps engaging in some Fiero, and some guy with a clipboard. Yeah, let's see, what's the number? I just love that contrast. And it's one thing that I find fascinating. They've shown that all primates engage in Fiero the same way. They make the same noises, the same thing with the jaw, the same thing with arms up. I've been trying to get a video. I'd love to put side by side of humans and gorillas doing this stuff. I'm still hunting for that good video. The pleasure of possibility, right? You know that moment when you go up to the buffet and you haven't picked anything yet, and you just stand in there. I could have any of these things. They're all possible right now. None of them have happened yet. Right? You could just go for the best thing. Some level of analysis would say, just go for the best thing as soon as possible. No. The longer I can kind of draw out that moment of possibility, the more pleasurable it is. But of course, too much choice, yikes, is bad. And there have been a lot of studies about that. That when there were too many choices, people just, they back away. I read the folks at Head & Shoulders have been making more and more kinds of shampoo. And they had like 30 plus varieties of Head & Shoulders shampoo in an attempt to secure more shelf space. The argument being that more shelf space, more brands, more varieties will get us more shelf space, more likely for people to buy it. Instead, people will be like, which one do I'm going to get Prel, and they get out. And they reduced the number of varieties down to something like 12 or 14, and their sales went up with fewer varieties and less shelf space because the choices were within this manageable level. They were in the realm that is pleasurable, which again is a realm that's still somewhat mysterious to us. Tidiness is pleasurable. This is a thing I do. I like to sort my books by height because it looks nice. I just find it nice. Everything's just so. Some people, they like to keep their lawn tidy. That is not my lawn. My lawn would not be like that. But this fits in a lot of ways, right? People don't think about it, but like you play Pac-Man, part of the pleasure of Pac-Man is I clean the whole board. You could have Pac-Man be, you'll clear a level when you get 5,000 points. And there could be dots left and whoop, we go to the next level. Could do that, but it wouldn't be as pleasurable. It's more pleasurable to get every single dot that is clean and tidy. We find that very nice and pleasurable. And this is tied into the pleasure of progress. And the feeling of progress is so important for us. Many of us have run into these things. You're on LinkedIn or something. Your profile is 90% complete. Adding one more recommendation will get you to 95%. Who the hell cares how complete my profile is? Can I use LinkedIn or not? But they know that you want to clean it up. You don't want to be satisfied with 90%, right? And so they're kind of harping on this little bit of pleasure that you're into. Wonder. When you encounter something that fills you with awe, fills you with wonder, it's intensely pleasurable. And it's not something we always talk about. Pride. And pride has multiple sides. You can be proud of something you've done, but you can also be proud of something that someone else has done. Secrets are very pleasurable. It's pleasurable to keep a secret. Yes. You know something about someone, but you're not going to tell them. Something that because it's not right for them to know it. And you have that little secret and you're kind of proud. I kept the secret, and also, you have the status thing. I know it and you don't. But then, of course, telling a secret is also very pleasurable. And you sometimes regret it. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, but I had to. It just felt good to tell somebody. I had to tell somebody. And then there's, you can go on and on with secrets. Secrets are fascinating. And speaking of secrets, I don't know if people have seen the website Post Secret. It's kind of an art project somebody started where people would send in postcards where they would tell about something secret in their life. And a lot of them are kind of creepy things, but some of them are about secret pleasures. Like I like this one. It's talking about our Nestle's hot chocolate. I love this stuff, but I never buy the last box on the shelf because I want it to be there for the kid whose mom shops after I do. Now that's not necessarily really happening. Here we are using the pleasure of imagination to construct a situation where I'm helping somebody. So I'm using nurturing and imagination together to create this weird little pleasure. And pleasures, man, get weirder. I mean, there's so many. I have a friend who would tell me about, one of the things she loved when she was a kid, she still likes it now, is to have lots of little bottles. And to like pour things in and out of the little bottles and get them in a nice neat row. And it was partly tidiness, but it was partly something else. Another friend of mine told me, she's like, yeah, I love to scrape the dried glue off the glue nozzle. I just really like to do that. I like it so much that whenever I'm done with the glue, I smell just a little, so that next time it'll be there for me to pick. Wow. And what's that about? And I remember when I was a kid, my brother and I remember being, I don't know, I was maybe 9, my brother was 5 years old, and we were for some reason left alone in a public place for a while, because it was the 70s, and that was okay back then. And my brother says to me, hey, I wonder if anybody thinks we're orphans. And it freaked me out, because I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking. And it wasn't like something I was afraid of, it was a kind of a thing, and I could see it. There was this devilish kind of quality that, like, yeah, this fantasy of us being orphans, and like, and we both started. I could see we were both thinking, how can we get people to think that we're orphans? Because we had this little fantasy of independence and this other life, and if we could draw the people into it, partly it's we trick them. There's a pleasure in tricking somebody, but then it's also partly they would have sympathy for us, and it was complicated. And that's how it is. These things are rich and complicated, and we don't understand them very well. Pleasures are really more like cooking and less like chemistry, I think. But that doesn't mean we can't understand them better and do a better job. So, to sum up, pleasure is complex and it's counterintuitive. It's embarrassing to discuss it. We don't like to be observed, in a state of pleasure of almost any kind. We behave very differently with pleasure alone than we do with other people. Pleasure is not fully understood by anyone. It is deep and complex and confusing. It's the motivation for everything that we do. And it's the key to design in the 21st century. It's the business of designing for the wanna situations as opposed to the have to situations. It's definitely where design is going. So, how can I learn to design these pleasurable experiences? Well, I really advise keeping an eye on the game designers. Because the game designers have a lot of advantages here. They have to think about pleasure all the time. It's all they think about all the time because that's what they do, that's what they make. Further, they have permission to fail in a way that others don't. Because when you make say I'm going to make a voice recognition application. If I gave you a voice recognition application for the phone and it only worked like 75% of the time, you freaking hate it. 1 out of 4 times it's dialing the wrong number. But if I make cute little Nintendog, and little Nintendog only understands 3 out of 4 commands, you think that's pretty good for a little virtual dog to understand 3 out of 4 of the things you say? You think that's great. So we have latitude and freedom to explore things that other people don't, which is why, hey, screens in our pockets. It's like a new thing. We all have screens in our pockets. The Game Boy was like screens in your pockets, 20 years ago. And they were there first with that. Now people are talking about gestural interfaces. We've got the Kinect in the living room. And it can afford to kind of not be perfect and not be quite right. So there's a lot worth looking at, like where are the game designers going? Maybe that's a place that other people are going to want to go next, because they're out there. Anytime a new kind of pleasure can be satisfied, they're going to try and find ways to do it. And so a big part of this is to understand about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic reward. Putting chocolate on things works when the chocolate brings out some internal flavor. You could say, oh, chocolate never works on meat. Well, no, you can get like a nice mole sauce on Mexican chicken, and if you get the spices right, ooh, it brings some stuff out, and there's this beautiful resonance that comes out. In the same way, if you're looking at using extrinsic reward systems and such to create experiences that you want to make better, the thing to do is to design them so that they bring out intrinsic pleasures that people already have inside them. And if you're able to do that, then you're going to create things that are just, designed to give pleasure, and people are going to want